an understanding heart, and grant that we may learn to work thy will until the fullness of thy kingdom be come. Amen.
Before the hymn, the skipper would announce the latest names of those who'd lost their lives for king and country and the Dragon School. Sometimes his gruff old voice was full of tears when a particular favourite had been killed. Then we would hear the nickname of the boy, Pongo or Podge, and how he'd played 3Q for Oxford, and if only he had lived, he might have played for England, which he did, but in a grimmer game against the Hun. And then we'd all look solemn, knowing well there'd be no extra holiday today.
So recalled John Betjeman, who joined the Dragon School in Oxford aged 10 in the summer term of 1917. Headmaster from 1886 to 1920, Charles Lynham was known to all as the skipper. I confess to not attaching much importance to outward politeness, he said. I hate to be called sir every half minute. I prefer to be called skipper. And so he was. He built up lifelong friendships with his old boys, many of whom were regular attendees of old boys' dinners. Once a dragon, always a dragon. When the war came, 22 of Skipper's old boys joined the Oxfordshire and Buckinghamshire Light Infantry, and a number of them recorded their experiences for Skipper and the school magazine, which was the Facebook of its day, read in the trenches, on the seas, and in far-flung theatres of war. The 2nd Battalion, the Ox Bucks, were deployed to France towards the end of May 1916, and 3 proud old dragons sent Skipper their picture: Captain Geoffrey Rose, Captain Walter Moberly, and Captain Sholto Markham. Sholto Markham was a sportsman of some note. He had been an Oxford University hockey blue from 1910 to 1913. In 1911, the Oxford hockey team boasted no fewer than 5 old dragons. Sholto is seated next to the University and later England rugby captain Ronnie Poulton, who joined the Royal Berkshire Regiment and was killed in 1915. Sholto performed on some pretty muddy hockey pitches in his time, but nothing compared to the mud to be found on the Western Front.
For the last 2 months we have been in mudland, and there is generally shelling going on. I had to be dug out of the mud one night. We had gone out to lay a line, and about 20 yards from HQ I stepped into a mud patch, and there I had to stay till a duckboard and a spade were brought, and my leg was dug up as you would dig up a plant.
On August the 20th, 1917, the 2nd Battalion of the 4th Ox Bucks came up to the front to take part in an attack near Saint-Julien, in what was the 3rd Battle of Ypres. Into this attack went 3 of Skipper's dragons: Walter Moberly in B Company, together with 2 young second lieutenants, Will Scott, D Company, and Gifford Turrell, A Company. Captain Geoffrey Rose was ordered to remain behind and record the events of the day.
During the night of August 20th, the battalion relieved a portion of the front. 3 companies were placed in trenches bearing the name Capricorn, but B Company was further back. The operation orders for the attack of August 22nd assigned as the objective to the Oxfords a road running across the Hainbeck and referred to as the Winnipeg, Kansas Crossroad just beyond Schuyler Farm. Shortly before 5, the bombardment started. In the advance, behind the creeping barrage put down by our guns, C, D and A companies provided the first waves, while B Company followed to support the flanks. Half an hour after the advance started, D, B and A companies were digging in 150 yards short of the Winnipeg, Kansas Crossroad. In the case of C Company on the right, but little progress had been made. Pond Farm, a concrete stronghold, had proved too serious an obstacle. Before the line reached could be consolidated, our men found themselves the victims of sniping and machine gun fire from Schuyler Farm. which was not taken and to which parties of reinforcements to the enemy now came. More dangerous still was an old gun pit which lay behind the left flank. Colonel Wetherall detailed a special Berkshire platoon to tackle it. This platoon, assisted by some Oxfords on the scene, captured the gun pit and nearly 70 prisoners, but failed to garrison it. Upon the left, the 48th Division had failed to reach Winnipeg, with the result that this flank of A and B companies was quite in the air. On the battalion's right, the failure of C Company to pass Pond Farm left the flank of D Company exposed and unsupported. Moberly greatly distinguished himself in the task of maintaining this exposed position during the night of August 22nd and throughout August 23rd. Some of our men had to remain in shell holes unsupported and shot at from several directions for over 50 hours.
And what of Skipper's Dragons? Whilst Moberly won a DSO, Scott and Turrell were not so fortunate. Soldiering was in Will Scott's blood. His grandfather and his great-grandfather had both served in the Ox Bucks, the former at the Battle of Waterloo. As Scott got up to lead D Company over the top, he had Sergeant Major Edward Brooks VC at his side. Off we went together, Lieutenant Scott in front. At about 5:30 a.m. we reached our objective. Along came Lieutenant Scott, as lively as ever, with a wound in the wrist and another in his leg. An enemy machine gun rang out. We looked rather startled at each other for a few seconds, and then I quickly discovered that my commander had been hit. I placed him under cover as quickly as possible, but sorry to say he passed away in about half a minute from the time he was struck by the bullet. This was the end of my brave commander, and I can tell you, I have never seen or heard of a braver man. The location of his grave was lost in subsequent fighting, and thus his name appears on the Tyncott Memorial, along with those soldiers who have no known grave. Gifford Turrell, only 19 years old, had been with A Company. He was hit early on during A Company's advance. He was evacuated back to St Thomas's Hospital in London, where attempts were made to save his life throughout September and October. On November the 1st, he was assessed by a medical board. The report concluded, "In the last 2 days there has been fever and meningitis has set in with a fit. Recovery is improbable and he is failing rapidly." Gifford died the following day, 72 days after he had first been wounded, and following a funeral service at his old college, he was laid to rest in Holywell Cemetery in Oxford on November the 5th, 1917. The attack of the 22nd of August was, in the scheme of a 4-month-long battle at Ypres, a very small and meaningless event. The ground won by the Ox Bucks was surrendered almost at once by the troops replacing them. The battalion left the Ypres battlefield in mid-September. Their losses had been heavy. Their casualty list numbered 14 officers and 260 men. Will Scott and Gifford Turrell were 2 of 9 old dragons killed in the Third Battle of Ypres. The last year of the war was to claim another 21 of Skipper's boys. Many of them the skipper described as best and well-loved friends. Their lives cannot and must not have been given in vain, he wrote. The thought that has come down the ages and cannot lie is that the souls of the brave and righteous still live on.